Hey guys, Zach here with Minimalist Scapes, and today I'm super excited to take you guys along with me on another scape. As you can see in front of you, I've got this little glass terrarium, and I'm going to put something in here. Now, today's a little special because my sister is actually going to be one who gets this terrarium. Last time she saw my jar terrariums, she watches all of my videos, and she said she really would like one, so she texted me. And I picked up this glass container, so let's build a terrarium. Alright, so first things first, of course, drainage layer. And all that's going to be just some nice little pea gravel. Whoops. But as you can see, the top of the container is very narrow. It's actually quite hard for me to get my hand in and out of here. So I do need to keep that in mind when I do create the scape. So now with the drainage layer in, I'm just going to add in this little piece of window screen mesh. I just cut it out. It's not exact, it's not perfect, but it's going to do, and it's just going to act as a separator for the substrate and the drainage layer. Just to keep it separate in case my sister does want to redo it. This is just going to keep it nice and neat and tidy and keep the dirt from the gravel itself. So with that in, we can add in the topsoil. Well, I called it topsoil. That's just what it's mainly comprised of. In here is a mix of topsoil, sphagnum moss, and sand. So nothing too complicated. You can all get it in very large bags, and I find that this just holds over most plants that you're going to have in terrariums. The sphagnum moss holds on to moisture, whereas the dirt contains the nutrients that are needed, and then the sand acts kind of like an aerator to the substrate and keeps it light and fluffy so that even though it is moist, it doesn't get all bogged down and start to develop like mold or other bad things in your terrarium. Now with the substrate in, I can move on to the hardscape. And there were two very distinct ideas I was going to go with. I was either going to go with this clump of lava rock that I've glued together, or I was going to go with this little root. So I haven't seen either inside of this terrarium with the substrate, so I'm going to put the first one in, kind of look and see just how it goes. Now, the reason I've chose lava rock as my rock of choice for this is just because it is much more of a sponge-like rock, you could say. There's lots of pores and lots of areas for water to catch on the rock, so it is going to retain moisture a bit more, which is going to allow for a little more lenience as far as misting and watering goes when I do put in the mosses in this tank. Now, that does look pretty good. So let's take a look at this one as well. Ooh. I think I like that more. So I'm going to go with the root as the main focus feature instead of this cluster of rocks, but I am going to add in other lava rocks just as accent pieces. I don't know if you guys can see that too well actually, but I've got the log, the wood piece sort of laying flat like this, and there's some space down here. And then I've mounted it up behind it, so it's going to act as a sort of separator between the foreground and the background. It's right in the midground, and I think it looks really neat. So now I can add in a couple small chunks of lava stone that are going to act like nice little accents. So now the lava rock is in. There's a little chunk here, a little chunk here, and a little chunk up top. And this just adds a little bit more character to the scape itself, and it also is going to help hold in some moisture so that the moss is a little more forgiving as far as watering goes, so that if she does forget to mist them or water them, then no big deal, and it's going to be just fine. The other thing I want to point out before moving on as far as moss goes when speaking, you can see I mentioned earlier that this is a nice narrow inlet, so it's going to sort of stop the evaporation a little bit more than something that's just open top completely. Another option I will give her is just putting cling wrap over this. If you can only mist once a day, I would always recommend on most of your terrariums to put something over the opening to keep in that moisture, and it's going to allow mosses to thrive and grow a lot better than if they were just exposed without any of that moisture. Speaking of moss with it top of mind, let's add it in. So I've just got one big chunk right here. I don't know, oh shoot, it's not gonna fit completely. So all I'm gonna do is just tear out the spot that doesn't really fit. Hopefully that allows it to fit, and then I can use the rest of the other spots. So there we go, just pushing it down, then taking the rest of it and just filling in this foreground with lots and lots of moss. Now, this moss I just found out in my backyard, and I just picked it up. It's got, here, I'll show you. You can see it's just a clump of moss, and it's got grass sticking out of it, and then it just does have some dirt on the bottom. No big deal, just take it with it, and if you're not too picky, you can just put it in with the rest of your substrate. With that in, I want to move up top here and put in some other plants up there. So let me go get cuttings for them. So the first plant that's going to go kind of in the background is just going to be a couple small stems of nerve plant, or better known as Phytonia. This is just going to add a lot of color to the scape overall, and they're also not going to grow too tremendously fast. They're also quite good in these in terrarium settings because they're tolerable, I've found, and when they're more moist they'll grow kind of long, but when they're kept a little drier they'll grow more compact, so they're usually a good fit for terrariums. I've also got a second kind of Phytonia going in, one of these more sort of red ones that's going to act a lot like an sort of accent piece to the terrarium to draw your eye into over on the side. Let's see if I can get that. So that it draws you from over here into over there. Now next up is a plant that honestly I'm not even sure the name of. However, it's got these nice sort of leaf-like leaves. I guess it's kind of dumb, but they look very much like tree leaves, this plant, so I think it'll go great in this terrarium. It's also quite slow growing, I've noticed, so it should do quite well as sort of a background. It's definitely a bit bigger and bulkier, you can see, but it does kind of look like a maple tree or any other kind of tree that you'd see those leaves, so I think it goes great in this. Kind of feels like a fallen log or forest. Now for all this dead space back here, all I'm gonna do is something that you can actually never go wrong with, and that's just gonna be adding in some more moss. Now with all that in, all that there's left to do is give it a mist and see how it looks. So now this is the finished product. I'm super happy with how this turned out. It looks really good after I've misted it. The colors really have just popped, and there's really nothing that I would want to add to this. Super low tech, super easy to do, but you do see that I did add, I'm lying, I did add in these elder cones, and that just adds some botanicals and a little more interest to that area to really convey the feeling of a fallen tree or something in the forest, like the base of a tree in a forest. And I really think it looks great, and I think my sister's really gonna like it. So if you guys have enjoyed, or if you found this video useful in any way, please consider subscribing, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.